I saw Jaws the second day it came out in the theaters, and I was captivated by the trailer. I was into special effects when I was younger, so I was fascinated with the mechanics of how they made the movie. You know, even standing in the lobby of the Gateway Theater in Pittsburgh, and there's the one lobby card of Hooper in the cage with the shark sort of gliding by. And I remember staring at that and just thinking, how did they do that? It was really one of those first times seeing something where I just felt like I needed to know everything about how the movie was made.
Oh, Greg's the ultimate. I mean, he's the ultimate Jaws fan. You know, I mean, I came to work here in 2003, and I mean, I picked up on that right away. I mean, he let me look through his, you know, his extensive collection of black and whites, and I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you take a look at it and you can't fathom that anybody could have that many behind-the-scenes photos, because I'm a collector myself, and it's truly amazing. You know, he's the ultimate.
The guy's the biggest Jaws fan that I have ever known. And I think even people in the industry who don't know him personally know that he is the biggest Jaws fan, period.
Very true, because I knew it was going to have to be perfect.
I mean, the guy's got so many photos. He's got more photos on his computer in the office than most people have gigabyte space on their computers. And I didn't think that was possible. I saw them because I needed paint reference. And I said, you have this many? He said, this is just Jaws photo. And I said, that's gigs. He said, and I said, are you kidding me? He's like, no, look. And he said, you start going and going and going. It's like the movie times 12 on his computer in there. So, yeah, he's going to be really, really passionate about if it's a scene or something from Jaws. Oh yeah, it's going to be spot on, or it's not going to exist.
I remember going to the McDonald's after the movie and putting my arm out the door of the car, and I was scared. I pulled my arm back up like a shark was going to get me in the parking lot.
Of McDonald's.
Of McDonald's. And yeah, that movie made me love movies.
Funny too, when you think about the marketing of the film and the fact that right when the movie came out, there were 500 cheapy rip-off magazines all about shark attacks. And they would have one article about the movie, but then the rest were Jaws of Death. And the paintings on the cover would be like a little kid with his leg ripped off. Yeah. And you bought every single one of them. I mean, it was so, it's like Nick said, you couldn't get enough. My parents were vacationing in the Bahamas in the late 60s, and my mom caught a 9-foot dusky shark. So in our basement, on the wall was a crappy taxidermy version of the shark, which I still own, by the way. So the night that I saw Jaws, I came home, and my nightmare was that our basement flooded and the shark popped off the wall and started swimming in circles. So clearly that movie affected millions and millions of people in the exact same way, but then everybody tailored their obsession to some form or another. About a year and a half ago, I obtained one of the Ben Gardner heads that was allegedly used in the film. Now, it's tricky because you never know the provenance of some of these pieces, because rumor has it Spielberg has the head in his magical warehouse where all the sharks are and E.T. is, and someday. So a friend of mine had given me the head that was on display at Universal Studios. And it clearly is very, very old and was made around the same time. So my feeling was, okay, what I really want to do is I don't want to make a mold on that because I don't want to destroy it because it's, 35 years old. But I wanted to explore options for preserving replica props or screen use props, sorry. So I went over to Cyber Effects in Burbank, and I talked to Dick Kavdak, who owns Cyber Effects. And I said, listen, I want to do a little experiment. I want to scan this head, and I want to take the digital information, and I'm going to have you output me a 1-to-1 scale head. I just want to see what we can do. If we were to recreate this head, I want to do it as closely as possible. So took the head over there, he scanned it, he brought a foam head over, Jim Leonard and the guys molded it, gave us a clay, and Jeremy Aiello resculpted the head. Once the head was done and molded, again, Dirk Rogers ran the silicone, Jack Bricker did the hair work, Rich Mayberry painted it, we put the eye in it, we put the teeth in it, and it's, in my opinion, sort of the closest approximation of what that head would look like if we were shooting Jaws today and we needed that head to pop out of the bottom of the boat. So that, to me, that exercise happened about a year before we did this. So that's what sort of planted the seed in my head. Nick and I have had a great working relationship. He's provided some fantastic work for KNB in the past. I think his likeness sculptures are spot on. He's a fellow Jaws fan, so I called him into my office one day. It was right after Monsterpalooza, and I had seen Mike Hill's Reagan from The Exorcist, which blew me away. Mike's work is so inspiring. So I called Nick into my office, and I was like, hey, I got an idea. I got a proposition for you. And of course, anytime I say that to anybody, everybody's like, ooh, this is going to be good, because Nicotero is obsessed with recreating everything he loved as a kid in 1-to-1 scale. So Nick goes, I have an idea too. So like before we even started the conversation, I had my pitch to him and he's like, okay, but when you're done, I have an idea too. So in pure business fashion, I go, well, let me hear yours first. So
I wanted to do, one of my favorite scenes in the film was Quint in full wardrobe on the chair, looking down at the reel while he's having his crackers and watching the spool and that first tick of the spool. And that's what and Greg's like, wow, that's amazing, because my idea...
well, no, it's...
hold on now.
Okay.
Did you know going into the office that it was going to be a Jaws conversation?
No.
That's crazy.
However, 9 times out of 10, most conversations end up revolving around Jaws. If they don't, they're not very good. So Nick pitched me his idea, and I was like, dude, that's a great idea. However, or what if...
Multiplied by...
what if we did all 3 characters? I said, because here's the truth of the matter is, each character is profoundly important to the overall story. And I didn't want to make a shark, because we've already done the head. And I didn't want to do a full-size shark, because Howard would literally kill me. I would be dead. This could be the last record of me ever being interviewed. Howard Berger would cut my head off and bury me in a parking lot in Chatsworth. So,
why?
Why? Because I would probably do it, and I would have everybody in the shop working on it, and this thing would take up half the shop, and he would go, where the hell are we going to put that? I'm like, I don't know, but look how cool it is. Like, to me, it's just, there's the shark from Jaws.
Exactly.
So I countered Nick's idea with, what if we did all 3? And I said, I have an idea in my head already. There's a great moment in the movie where they're on the back of the Orca, and they have a run-in with the shark. And if you look at the lobby cards for the movie, there's one particular shot where they're all posed, leaning over the transom, looking off to something unseen. Now, clearly for the lobby card, that's purposes of selling the movie. But my feeling was, okay, Quint sitting in the chair would be great as a one-off, but I want to recreate like a moment. I want people to be able to walk up to this display and feel like they've stepped into the film. Because to me, and jump in any time, but I think the goal, the whole reason you do this, the whole reason that you fans exist is because they want to find a way to transport themselves into the movie that they love. So building a model kit and painting a little Wolfman, yeah, that gets you closer to it. Flying to Martha's Vineyard or going to Georgetown and being at the bottom of the steps from The Exorcist, people can stand there and go, oh my God, that's where it happened. Yep. So I have found that fans respond to that, being able to put themselves in the movie. So that was my goal. So Nick was like, wait, so that means we get to do 3 and I get 3 times the amount of work? I'm in. Sounds great.
It's very ambitious. I loved it. I loved it. I was like, yeah, 3? Of course. 3 is better than 1, any way you slice it. I thought it was fantastic. It was bigger, much bigger. My idea was little. This was a big idea.
This was exercise in saying, you know what, guys, we build stuff for movies. We build it, you shoot it, it's done, it goes away. It either gets destroyed or it gets put in storage and it's covered in dust and it's gone. So the goal was, between our painters and our mold makers and our fabricators and everything, I'm like, I want to create a scene. And I want to create a scene so that if this display ends up in Spielberg's lobby or at Universal for Halloween Horror Nights or in some museum somewhere, that's fine by me, which is probably where it would end up somewhere. Not that I would ever get sick of it, because it's awesome. So first and foremost, we never set a date as to when it has to be done. If it takes 3 weeks to do a sculpture, great. If it takes 3 days to do the sculpture, also great, because time is always your enemy. Because if you rush through it, it doesn't look right, and then all of a sudden you're like, God, I put so much energy and time and money into it, and then it doesn't look right. That is a huge pet peeve of mine. We started with sculptures that Nick did, and they weren't based on life casts. They were literally from scratch, pristine. So Hooper was about a month.
Yeah, about a month.
All right, well, what about the other two?
Next was Scheider. That was about 2 weeks. Again, he's
fast.
very quick.
Yeah.
He's easy. Quint took maybe 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, so if you really think about that, starting from scratch and then getting the likenesses, you know, it's certainly challenging. And I think, again, not having a deadline and allowing Nick to take the time to make them look right was critical. So it was really, really important that when we were doing season 2 for Walking Dead, Nick had started sculpting on Hooper and was sending me photos. Hooper took a while to do because the likeness was challenging.
Most of his face is covered by a beard and mustache. You can't see a lot of the subtleties of his face. So that's why I immediately went to like an American Graffiti for reference to study. But he has a very tricky face. He, I believe, is the toughest likeness I've ever done because his face changes dramatically with differing expressions. When he smiles, his cheeks get really full. When he's serious, his face almost tends to thin out. And he gets that little furrowed brow. And he has many different expressions. His eyes tend to crinkle up when he smiles. I wanted the challenge right up front. You know, because to be honest, Scheider, to me, when I did the small version, it was the same thing. He was done very quickly. Very distinctive face. Very distinctive features. There's not really anyone who looks like Roy Scheider at all.
So once the sculptures were done, they were sent to Jim Leonard in our mold department.
Knowing that it was for Greg and that it was for Jaws, it was like, you know, this has got to be right on, you know, because you can see how it turned out. I mean, they're terrific, you know. As a mold maker, I mean, I supervise, but as a mold maker, I still look at that as a piece of art. And, you know, maybe that's not the way to look at it, but I look at it as a piece of art. I look at it as I'm taking somebody's baby. It's now in my hands, and I have to mold it and do it the very best I can to make sure that their work's not lost or screwed up, you know.
Once that's done, then Grady Holder made the eyes and teeth. Then it goes to painting. So Rich Mayberry, who's been with us probably about 2.5 years, is one of the premier painters in the industry.
They all have distinct skin tones here as opposed to what you'd see in the photographs, because he had a description of Richard Dreyfuss as being somebody who's inside more, so he's going to be more pale and pink. And of course, you know, Quint's going to be, he's on his boat all the time, so he's going to be a little more tan, a little rough, dirty. So he wanted to see that in each one of them. The one thing I do really, really enjoy about working with Greg is he is very, very particular, very detail-oriented, and so am I. So I know that when he comes to me and says, I want this, that I'm going to get the most amount of creative direction that can possibly be given.
When you're dealing with a fantasy character or a fantasy creature, something that you design, you have liberties that you can take. You know, oh, you know, I want the texture to look like this, I want the paint job to look like this. That's challenging, because coming up with a creature that people haven't seen before that is effective, that's a whole other skill set. recreating creatures that other people have designed, like Predator as an example. That's much more technical because you're matching something that exists already and you're sort of refining the technique as you go. Fake heads, it's interesting because the more character you have in a fake head, the better it looks. It always ends up being the hair and the eyes that make it look real. So in this instance, one of the things that was super important to me was that the hair have a very specific wind-blown look. Like all the styling of the hair, I wanted it to look like they were outside, the boat is on the ocean, so their hair's a little messed up. And it's messed up for a reason. It's messed up because you want to simulate the wind and the salt water that makes your hair kind of knotted. So, you know, Hooper's hair looks very windblown. And Nick recommended a woman that he had worked with. She had done some work for us named Denise Bear. She came in and did a stunning job, an unbelievable job. So the heads were done, the hands were done, the bodies were done. Beth Hathaway, who's our lead fabricator, was in charge of putting all the wardrobe. And I don't know how many times we were on eBay, like, blue sweatshirt.
Well, it was more of a group effort because I was in a little bit over my head when it came to learning about, like, duty belts and guns and that sort of thing. I didn't know anything about that, so I got help here at the studio. We just went online, went on eBay. Mike McCarty found the gun for me. Reggie in the front office found the glasses for me. And we started putting bids on. Actually, that wasn't so difficult to get the costumes done. It was the actual putting the bodies together, which was more tricky. We didn't have body casts of any of them, so we went into storage and found bodies out of stock that we thought would be, you know, as close as we could get. And then I cut them all apart and built them up around the armature. Because this was a passionate project for Greg, it's different than you know, being hired by someone from the outside to do it because, I mean, I knew if it's going to be sitting here every day, he's going to come in and look at it, and if it's wrong, he's going to be unhappy about it.
Every single day.
Know?
And he will eventually get tired of looking at
Yeah.
it and bring it back out and have somebody fix what he doesn't like about it. If it's the tiniest little thing and it's like, it's just eating at him, he'll come out and, can we just tweak his finger a little bit over? Okay, no.
So it's different than, you know, if I'm not taking something on set, when it's finished, okay, there it goes, it's going in the box.
Next
Hack
thing.
it up, out it goes, it's out of my hair now. But I knew this guy would go away and come back again.
This one is living here. This
Yeah.
one is going to be here every single day.
They had a JAWSFEST in Martha's Vineyard last year, and I thought, oh, this is the perfect place to premiere these figures because Shaw's sister is going to be there, and Dreyfuss was slated to potentially go. So we thought this would be great. It'll be an opportunity for fans of the movie to see this display. So, of course, there was one other little aspect of it that I hadn't counted on yet or hadn't worked on yet, and that was the boat. So the Orca itself, which is, again, another character in the movie. Yeah. So probably would have been smarter and cheaper for me to just do Quint in the chair with the cracker and the rod and reel. I'm sure my children's college fund would be much fuller at this particular moment. However, like I've always said, if you're going to do it, I was all in. I'm like, here's my stack of chips.
Go big or go home.
I'm putting it all on Jaws and just pushing it all forward. So, so I have an artist friend named Paul McPhee who does a lot of beautiful marine paintings, and he's painted a lot of Jaws stuff. And I told him about this. I told a couple people in the Jaws community what I was doing, and I would sort of slide photos to them just to get them excited about it. And Paul had said, well, listen, I'll build the boat for you. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, he lives on Martha's Vineyard. He goes, yeah, you know, dude, there's not a lot for me to do right now, and I'd love to build it. Paul calls me one day, and he says, listen, I have a friend here named Eric Ropke. Eric actually worked on the original movie as a carpenter and built the Orca 2, which was the one that was rigged with the barrels that was able to sink. So he goes, hey, I got a friend of mine. He's going to help me. He said, what do you mean he's going to help? He's like, yeah, he offered to do it. Because evidently, Paul had showed him photos of the figures, and was like, well, wait a minute. If he's building these figures have to have a good home. So this fantastically talented pair of guys, they built the rear end of the boat in Martha's Vineyard, which is a whole other skill set, which clearly I don't have. Otherwise, I probably would have built it. The first unveiling was we packed the figures up in one giant crate, and the crate got shipped to Martha's Vineyard. Now, I was on Walking Dead in Georgia, flew to Martha's Vineyard. Eric and Paul brought the Orca transom over, and I unpacked the figures, took the figures, mounted them into the back, and then, of course, they were like, oh, yeah, so the festival starts on Friday morning, and it's inside this house. And I'm like, oh, well, how are we gonna get this inside the house? And it turns out that the house was owned by this wealthy physician on Martha's Vineyard, and the floors were immaculate. And it was like a house where you would have a cocktail party. Oh yes, I like Jaws, whatever. So it was completely ridiculous. So we literally had to carry in the transom through these doors, put it into this room, and then bring the figures in, and I had to screw down and mount everything in there. And I kept going, and they were sitting in front of a window, so there was no light in their eyes, and I was like, ugh. But the long and the short of it was, the display was finished. And once it was done, and we got all the bubble wrap and the crates out of the way, and we were able to step back and look at it, it was astounding. So the festival starts the next morning, and it's Robert Shaw's sister. It's Carl Gottlieb, Joe Alves, who's the production designer. It was Wendy Benchley, Peter Benchley's wife. I'm trying to remember who else was there. There was Rodney Fox, who was a shark expert. Mm-hmm. There's all these people. So they have this little opening ceremony, and they bring them all over into the house where the figure is. And Robert Shaw's sister is just looking at it and staring at it. And I'm looking at the two of them. And I can see him and her in terms of her face and see the bone structure. And I'm like, oh, yeah, total brother and sister. But it was just, and Susan Backlinie, who plays the girl, Chrissy Watkins, was there. And watching them look at it was fascinating for me, because in their mind, they saw that for real. They saw those three guys standing there for real, watching it. So to see people that were there transported back to that moment, it was pretty astounding.
This has to be one of the coolest, most realistic looking displays that I've ever had the pleasure of being involved in. And I'm tickled pink every time I see a new photo that I haven't seen. It's like, oh, there it is from that angle. It looks the only disappointing thing is to me, is that more people haven't seen it in person. A photo is nice.
Well, you got to go to the next JAWSFEST.
Look at that in person, and then you really have an appreciation for it.
I was proud that Greg even introduced me, to even want me to be a part of it. And then to have me kind of put in my 2 cents every now and then down the road. But seeing it all finished up, it was like a dream come true.
It certainly was an ambitious undertaking. I would do it. I would do it again. I mean, the minute that we finished with this, I said, Nick, I got an idea for another one. He was like, really? After all that, you got another? I mean, it may not be 3 guys. It'll be like the Wild Bunch. I'll have like 4 of them walking. No, I don't know. But yeah, because, it's every time you look at it, you get something out of it. It really is like a museum piece. And I would love for this to end up in a museum somewhere, or a permanent display at somewhere. I would love for it to be there so that other people can get an opportunity to experience it. But certainly for me, I would, and we probably will do it again.
What filmmakers don't realize is they sink a hook in you. And all I can tell you, if you've got that drive, if you've got that passion, go for it.
If it's something that is near to your heart and you really love,
do it.
Just do it.
Find a way to do it.
You don't have to do it all at once. It could be a long project. I mean,
what Jim
Leonard's working on, that's a whole
Oh my
other
goodness,
thing.
that's a whole nother thing for you guys to, off the chain. But yeah,
if it's something
you
you
want
love,
it,
you should just do it and ask all your friends, get everybody
have a
to
little
help
patience,
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
If there's something that you don't know how to do, ask somebody, because usually somebody in your circle of friends will know how to do it or know somebody that
I
does.
mean, we're all fans. Everybody here was happy to work on it. And was like,
Exactly.
well, let me help. I know where I can get this, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you've got that kind of passion, if you collect like Greg does, like I do, I mean, it's something that burns inside of you that you just have to do, you know? And if you feel that strongly, and I mean, you can tell, I mean, this is, you take a look at his body of work and you can see his interest, but this takes front and center.
I worked with some younger kids now in the industry, and they ask, you know, how do we stay in it? You know, I mean, it's such a struggle. And I just tell them, if you really want it bad and you can't think of doing anything else, you're certain this is your course, just work as hard as you can and apply yourself, and never accept a standard and say, oh, that's good enough. Always, everything can be better. And that's what I always tell a lot of the kids. You know, it was tough for me to come, 2,500 miles in that bus ride. It's
Down the street.
Down the street, yeah. Very tough, leaving your family, your friends, everyone. I didn't know anyone here but my godmother. But I knew there was no other choice. This is what I had to do.
What you're seeing is a testament to our passion and our dream. And, you know, having my imagination just expanded exponentially as I was a youngster, watching these kinds of fantasy movies and seeing the makeup and seeing the creatures and the characters and following that passion. I mean, that's defined who I am. I changed my life's path from being a doctor. I was pre-med, and I followed my passion. I loved making monsters, and I just wanted to be a part of it somehow. I had no idea, because I grew up in Pittsburgh, and then I'm walking down the street, and there's George Romero and Tom Savini. I'm like, I think that's the way I should go. And I went, and, you know, that was literally 29 years ago.